Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mindfulness in Politics Project, your weekly podcast about reducing stress and anxiety while working in the fields of media, politics, and policy. Josh, one of the themes that have really emerged in our project thus far is this idea that it's not all on you. And for me, some of the guests we've had who've really underscored that notion, people like Jeff Creeley, our very first guest, who really taught us, hey, this work isn't a sprint. It's not even a marathon. It's actually a relay race. And you need to pass that baton to your teammates in order to actually make progress. You need to work with other people. It's not all on you. That has been so incredibly helpful because I'm someone who gets some real tunnel vision. I focus in on a particular project. I plan out how I think it's going to go or should go. And then I really put 110% into moving that ball forward. And sometimes it works, but oftentimes it falls short for whatever reason. And I get disappointed. I get frustrated. I've gotten very burnt out in various parts of my career. And so, this idea of recognizing that A, it's not all on you, B, the system in which we're operating is so incredibly complex, I think allows me to really be more compassionate to myself, to be a little lighter, a little less intense in how I pursue this work, because there's not a direct correlation between how hard I go and how successful a particular project would be.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. And we all have this tendency, Igor, to kind of think of ourselves being at the center of the universe. You hear people say, the world doesn't revolve around you. And it's not about trying to get over an ego thing. I mean, I think it makes sense from a very basic evolutionary standpoint why when we are engineered to essentially ensure our own survival, that we start to look at everything around us as either helping us to achieve our goals or somehow standing in the way. Therefore, when things get in our way or they don't go the way we want them to, or we can't force them into the shape that we want, we start to feel like it's like a personal affront to us. It's been shoved into our face as this obstacle that we have to somehow clear out. And so this is not about saying be less self-centered or obsessed with the fact that things aren't exactly the way you want them to, but there is that aspect of sort of widening our lens to take a bigger view of the fact that actually, while what we need and want is very important and should be to us, that we are such a small cog in this broader system. And in fact, the vast majority of what we encounter every day actually has nothing to do with us, including the dynamics even that come up in our interpersonal relationships, in our work interactions, in our projects and efforts. And I think having a little bit of that humility and broader sense of scope can really start to suck some of the pressure out of the system when you can get really myopic and focused on, why isn't this going the way I need it to?
Yeah. The other piece of this for me is just being mindful of the reality that the system and the individuals operating in that system are built in such a way that it is not impossible, but very unlikely that a single person or a single campaign will make all of the difference. Just a couple of days ago, I got to see Gabor Mate here in San Diego. He is a physician and an author who specializes in childhood development and in addiction. He talks a lot about the way trauma and our early childhood experiences shape the way we view the world. And he argues that two individuals could watch the same exact video or attend the same exact event and have two very different perspectives on what they see, take away different lessons from that video or from that event. And he says that part of the reason that that's so is because our perceptions of the world are shaped by our early experiences as children. So even though we think we are witnessing and experiencing true reality, we're looking at the world through a lens that has been built based on the experiences that we had, based on the conditions that we first grew under, and that I found very meaningful, because I just know in my career, I have felt a lot of frustration that it's been difficult to convince people of a particular argument, even if you lay out all of these, all of these facts and tie them all together and do all this work in trying to push people in a certain direction. Uh, Oftentimes you're just going up against this fundamental truth that we just see the world differently because we've lived in the world differently.
I tend to think of it when I come into a situation like the kinds that you've described that are just full of so much um, tension. They're so fraught. They're so different than the way that we want them to. And imagining or trying to pinpoint all of the things going on in my own life that are coloring the way that I'm entering that situation.
Mm.
So if it's a difficult interaction at work, it's something that's not going well. It's you wish that another person that you're sort of relying on was engaging with their work in a different way. Um, and trying to put a finger on all of the different things that are going on or have gone on in my life unrelated to that are actually coloring that experience for me. There's this story that I really like that a lot of meditation teachers have spoken of. I think Tara Brach really popularized it, but she talks about imagining that you're walking in the woods and you see this little puppy kind of in the leaves, and you go up to kind of approach it, and it bites your finger, and your initial reaction is probably one of anger. Why the heck did you do that? How dare you? You might even have a instinct to, try to punish the animal or hit it back or something like that. And then you take another step closer and you realize that underneath those leaves, that the dog's foot is stuck in a trap, and it's probably experiencing a huge amount of physical pain and suffering that you weren't even aware of. And in a split second, your entire perception of why this other being treated you the way that it did is completely altered. And instead of being one of anger, it might shift so quickly to compassion. Oh, this poor guy, he's foot stuck in a trap. He's scared. Some stranger approached him. What can I do to try to make this better for them? Now, that's obviously a gross oversimplification of the dynamics we experience with other human beings day to day. But I think it does speak to the fact that there's really such a limited view that we have about what's going on with other people. And the more that we can keep an open mind about that, the less we can sort of torture ourselves when things aren't going the way we want or people aren't interacting or engaging the way we hope that they would.
And I think it also just is an invitation to enter these interactions with a greater lightness, with maybe some more kindness and compassion and um, an invitation to avoid jumping to conclusions that are based on assumptions that we hold that may not be reflective of the actual situation. I think maybe that's what I'll really start deliberately practicing, of not jumping to some kind of assumption that, oh, this person didn't send me this thing on time and therefore they're not good at their job, or they're trying to screw me over in some kind of way. Maybe like move all of those assumptions aside and show up in a more open kind of way, because I suspect that that kind of approach could also actually improve your effectiveness if you're not automatically filling a space with all of your own kind of baggage, right, that we carry throughout life. um, and encountering people with just a greater sense of understanding and a greater sense of possibility that maybe, to use your metaphor, their leg is stuck in a trap in some kind of way, right? And that's why they're coming across as what as difficult, or as what you perceive to be difficult.
Yeah, I love it. I'm eager to see how that works out for you. I think that, it's almost never a bad idea to take whatever feels like such an immediate problem, obstacle, just, thing, that sort of natural mental tension when we can't force things to be the way we want them to, and try to just hold that lightly. Not to say that it doesn't matter, not to say that we're giving up. It's not about futility, and it's not about nihilism, but just to kind of lower the stakes mentally a little bit. We have such a tendency to really make everything, 100 miles an hour and as urgent and as high stakes as it can possibly be. And while particularly in the worlds of politics and media, these issues really matter, and so the stakes are really high. But sort of like over torquing it mentally and emotionally is actually almost never useful or helps us be more effective. And I think we all probably have interacted with folks in really high pressure situations, and yet when things really get tense, they sort of are able to drop down into that place of real calm, steady clarity, and they sort of don't let the fact that things are really important and urgent and dire um, torque their sort of internal momentum to a level where it's not helpful. And those people, I think, can be reminders to us, that we're not always well served by letting ourselves get swept away with our own knowledge and recognition of the importance of the work that we're doing. And in fact, sometimes it's when we can really maintain that kind of equanimity internally that we're best able to do our best and most effective work on these really important challenges.
Yeah, Josh, that equanimity is so incredibly important, especially during these stressful and difficult times for so many of us. And we'll continue bringing you conversations with teachers and scholars and experts on how to use the tools of mindfulness to better achieve that calm.